Welcome back, everybody, to the Renewables podcast, and we're a bit of a different one today. We've not got any guests with us. What we thought we'd do is a bit of a reflection on our progress, really, and just chat about the people that we've had on and goals for the future. And we've got a big announcement as well, which we'll talk about very soon. But how are you doing, Mark, firstly?
I'm doing really good, thanks. It's lovely to be talking to you again. I think we've had lots of exciting and interesting guests, but I've really been looking forward to chatting with you about the things we've achieved on the podcast already. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, so it's going to be a bit of a different one, and we mentioned, I think that was the first episode, that this podcast would not be about us as individuals or as our company, promoting our companies. This is about, the only selfish thing about this would be that we get the information first from these people. We really wanted to kind of just be the voice to the industry, or try and build ourselves to that, and that comes through respect of the industry, but also impartiality as well. And I felt like we've done that. We obviously have our own views on things, and products that we back ourselves as individuals and companies. But I think the thing that I feel like we'll always do on the podcast, and I feel like we've started to do that already, is just give a fair voice to everybody, even if we agree or not as to that product or that brand or that regulation change or whatever it is. I feel like we're just there to ask the questions and kind of put it out there a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's learning from that feedback we're getting as well. I've had a lot of my views changed actually through some of the conversations we've had, and not necessarily with the likes of Graham Kenyon, other installers as well, where you take bits of their knowledge and you think, actually, maybe I've not been quite right on that. So yeah, there's a benefit there for us, and maybe the audience listening along get that too. So yeah, I think we've had a good, solid start.
Yeah, I think that opens it up to people listening to this now. If there is anything that you think we could do better, if there's anything that you want us to focus on as some guests, we've got our own ideas and our own goals on that, which we'll go into. But we are there really to chat to people that everyone listening or watching this wants us to chat to. So if there's a person that you think would be a fantastic guest and that has a lot to say about, could be electrical, could be plumbing, could be wind, could be anything really, in the renewable space, then we want to link up with them and have a chat to them. And yeah, that's what we're aiming to do over the next however many episodes till we have another catch up.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've had a lot of feedback coming into the podcast, which has been really nice. There's comments on social media and on the YouTube videos that have been released, and the engagement with the audience. We've both said that all along. We really like and want that. So if you are wanting to suggest things and comment, please do. And you're a seasoned content creator, Sam, so I'm not going to try and kind of tell you're sucking eggs or whatever, but your hosting on this podcast has been exceptional. I've done loads of podcasts with all kinds of people across industry, and yeah, you're right up there, mate. So you're doing a properly good job. It's one of those where we've got to allocate the time on this. Sam's travelling to come and see me here in Driffield once a week or so, giving up a few hours of his time, and just kudos to you, because you're smashing it.
Thank you very much, and I take a lot of inspiration from what you've done as well previously and on this, because you are a seasoned pro at this, or it feels like that. You might not feel like that yourself, but it feels like that, and so I'm very much using you as a crutch to lean on that. But I've just really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it, and I wasn't sure, having not done anything like this before, I wasn't sure how much I would have to say if there'd be awkward silences. I think that was my biggest worry, that there would be awkward silences, and every guest that we've had on has probably had that fear as well. And what we've learned through however many episodes we've done, we maybe should have counted that up, but however many episodes we've done for this one being released, what I found is that the conversation just seems to flow, and everyone we've had on has been passionate about the area that they're on to speak about. Graham Kenyon coming on and chatting about the whole PAS thing and Amendment 3 and all of that. And we've had a couple of contractors on recently passionate about what they do, their little niche. And it just shows you there's so many good people in this area. The trades area can have people that are in it for the wrong reasons, but I've never felt that with anybody we've spoken to. Even manufacturers, they're in it to do the best that they can, and I hope that just carries on through all these other episodes that we do, and just that as a common theme, and actually show people that actually, even though you might be annoyed at a company, My Energy for their technical support or, the regulations for coming out, that they are trying to do things to be for the installer and for the industry as a whole. And I think that can sometimes get forgotten when you're on a technical help support line at 5 o'clock and you still haven't got something working. So yeah, I think that's what I'm taking away from this massively, is that everyone's in it to try and do the best they can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on social media especially, a lot of these things can run away with themselves, be it Amendment 3 or be it the My Energy thing that I was part of actually on some of the social media content that sprung up. But once you get into the conversation with those people, as you've said, they are all so passionate and so interested in it. And there was people making those accusations that when they come on to speak with us, it'll just be about the brand, it'll all be edited away, and there's been none of that.
No.
We've released all of these episodes really raw. I don't think we've had to cut out many things other than the odd toilet break, and it's
Guilty.
It's just been really nice to have that honest chat on this show, and those people wanting to come and spend that time with us doing that. It's a real privilege actually for myself personally. I think that we're really lucky to be able to do that, and hopefully the audience have got some value from it. And as part of that, we've had a bit of exciting news that you alluded to earlier on in the podcast that we can maybe share with the audience.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a lot of your hard work in that, so I'll let you announce that, and then I'll go into why I'm really excited about this sponsor.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of the prior guests on the show, the team at Proteus. They do a lot with us at Apprentice 1-to-1 already, and they're really keen to work with what we're doing in Renewables as we are working with them. So Proteus want to sponsor our podcast here. We've been really honest with you guys and girls in the audience that's what's happening. But we've got plans to use that sponsorship, not to start driving around in Lambos and living up the big life. That's
what I was going to do, Mark. No,
there's things
not.
we want to do, isn't there, Sam?
Absolutely. I think we've been honest with ourselves as well, that we've got a limited amount of time that we want personally, but also for everybody watching and listening, that we can stay at a beginner's level is probably a bit too rude for your setup, because this is all 100. This is all 100% Mark's setup. But we want to invest everything that we get really into making it better for everybody watching and listening, because we're on a ticking clock. If it stays like that for years and years, then people just can see that we're getting sponsored, because there'll be the reads that come onto the podcast, only short ones, but the reads coming onto the podcast, and if it's not improving, then it kind of erodes that value. Whereas we want to put it back into the podcast, improve what we're doing, improve the connection with the brands, the people, all of that, and just really help push it, because we do want to be one avenue. There's going to be plenty more, but one avenue that installers, customers, manufacturers, everybody in the renewables industry can start talking to each other. And for us, our responsibility of that is to make that clearer and better, but also just to connect more people together as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's our goals for using of that sponsorship money. A Lambo would be nice, but that's maybe a while off. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how I see the goals for the podcast. What is that kind of similar to yourself, or?
Yeah, I mean, just looking around now at what we've got, it is stuff I've repurposed from the podcast to do with Apprentice 1-to-1. We're recording off 2 smartphones right now, so one of the things we really want to look at is some better camera quality. I think that's one of the weaknesses we've identified in the podcast. Sometimes it is a bit grainy. Sometimes because we're zooming so heavily digitally, it doesn't look the best. And if we're trying to position this as YouTube content, it really does need to improve at that level. So that's definitely something I think we can look towards. But it's also when we go in the field recording this stuff, we're taking quite a lot of gear with us. We've got these big tripods and microphones. Maybe there's better ways of doing this, and we might reach out to those people creating content, doing these things more regularly, to help us with tips on that. Because we've pitched up to My Energy, we've gone off to Proteus, we went and did the installer show, and we're just electricians who are learning this as we go, aren't
Absolutely.
we? And we want it to be better for you guys and girls watching and listening. We want to do it credit, I think, and using that sponsorship money is a way we can try and do that.
And I think to to let everyone in kind of behind the curtain as to when we started this. Obviously, we discussed the whole sponsorship side of things, and we were quite clear that we didn't want the sponsor that we took on, if we were lucky enough to get someone that wanted to sponsor the podcast, we didn't want it to be something that that could be seen as guiding the conversation that we have. And so we've been very clear with each other as to the sponsorship can't push us to not mention, a competitor's product, or a company that has badmouthed the company that now sponsors the podcast. We've been very clear with each other that it has to be it has to be a sponsor that is within the industry to a degree, but doesn't provide like a conflict of interest within that.
And the Proteus team wouldn't do that anyway. I've worked with them for a long time, and their products map really well to us in renewables. That's the reason I was using them in the first place when we first started getting involved with this, is the bi-directional aspect of the RCBOs, the tails isolator switches. There's just none better in my opinion, and the same with the 100 amp connector blocks that are on the table there, and their range is just developing as we've explored on the podcast with Proteus the other week, which wasn't a sponsored episode. That was a genuine recorded setup that we went down there to do, and again in our own time making that trip down there to do that. It's just a good fit, I think. They're happy to work with us, we're happy to work with them, but we wanted to be honest with everybody, because we know what it's like in the social media world of things. You get those kind of accusations that pop up, that it's obviously just been paid to be there, and those views are fine. I'm not going to try and argue against that, but we are setting it out that we're looking to step up a level in what we're doing, and we're utilising that sponsorship money for doing that. Yeah,
absolutely. And obviously for us as people with our own businesses, we're devoting 2 hours plus most weeks to doing this as well, and we want to show the worth of that time by improving the podcast, so that we can connect more people, like we said. And it's one of them. When I went to Proteus, I was a little bit like, I wasn't sure what I was going to walk into, and the sponsorship side of thing wasn't on the cards at all at that point. It was genuinely a trip to a company that are already kind of within the renewables world, but sat enough on the edge of it that it wouldn't cause any conflict. But it was so eye opening for me. I know you obviously used them. I haven't used Proteus at this point. I've actually pricing a few jobs now with them in, because of what I saw on that trip, and it was just incredible the amount that they built in house, and the care and attention they took. And it just blew me away. And you can listen to these aren't comments since the sponsorship. You can listen to the podcast with Proteus, and it was just incredible. I couldn't believe that there was companies like that made this sort of equipment, that it must be so competitive in that market for them, that still took that care and attention and bespoke built just like a normal 3-phase board. I thought it might be on the big panel boards and stuff that had more money in them, but to take that much care and attention in the domestic, small domestic boards and everything else was just, it blew me away. And so I'm absolutely thrilled that they've decided to sponsor the podcast, because it's such an awesome fit. And the whole bi-directional thing, the Type B RCBOs, even like the DIN rail mounted SPD that you've got over there, allowing us to use a smaller board for the EV for the EV or PV installation, because some of the other brands have a double module one, or you have to have a MCB for the overcurrent protection, and it means that you may have to jump to a next size board, which isn't just one extra way, it might be 3 extra ways, which is bigger to fit in a cupboard and all this other stuff. So just little innovations like that, I think, make it so much better for the renewables installer.
Yeah, I mean they do, and if you've got a board in a garage or whatever, and you're 10 metres into the install, something that a lot of installers forget, you need to repeat that SPD protection, or you at least should be doing. And some of the equipment that we fit might have that built in. However, all of the final circuits that may be wired in that area wouldn't. And fitting one of these, they're not expensive anymore. These are quite low cost. Just drop them on the buzz bar and it's job done. And yeah, they are really good. We've had an install today actually where we've had a twin stack Proteus board turn up, paid for, fair and square from CEF, but it came pre-populated. This was something I didn't know about until I started going on those visits, is that you can actually tell them what you want and they will send it with all of the RCBOs in pre-wired into the neutral bar, which might not seem like a lot, but it's saving the packaging as well, the shipping of all of those individual components. They just come in one box all together and you've just got to screw it on the wall. So there's big upsides for us with Proteus as installers. But, we don't want to take this as a whole marketing podcast about
it's
Proteus.
not, yeah.
But we just wanted to introduce the kind of sponsorship and set out, we're going to be mentioning reads for them along the way, only short little segments. Just to be honest and open with that. And that was one of the podcasts we recorded. That was actually one of my favourite ones, actually, speaking.
I love that one.
Yeah, it was a really good chat and learning about the different products and the experience of recording out on location as well. I'd say one of my worst setups, I think, would be the My Energy one. We had some comments around the audio on that, and they were entirely fair that it wasn't the best audio reviewing back into the podcast. It's quite hard.
It was tricky, wasn't it? I don't even think we kind of mentioned when we first started that we would probably travel to places, but we were also very committed to working in this space as well, because we wanted an in-studio podcast to get people, see the whites of their eyes if they were bringing in new regulation that we didn't like, or chatting to people like that. And I think we kind of mentioned that we would maybe go out to visit these people, but we never really fully tested that we could until we actually got there, did we? We were kind of like, oh yeah, we've got to make all this work now. But again, testament to you for doing all that, because I just do not have a clue where all this stuff plugs in. Yeah. I joke to Matt that I basically just turn up in my Ray-Bans and just take a seat because it's quite a setup. But yeah, I think the main thing about this, we'll move on from this now, but the main thing that we want to get over to people is that you'll see the sponsorship coming in, but we want to be clear that is being put into making this better. So hopefully you'll see the quality of, whatever we finally decide to put this sponsorship money into making this better for everybody, and pushing the podcast forward, hopefully.
Absolutely. We're gunning for Fully Charged. Watch out. We'll have a big show at some point.
Yeah.
But the podcasts that we've done so far, Sam, if you had to kind of pick one out as a favourite, it's maybe unfair to ask you on the spot. Is there anything that you've really enjoyed that we've done so far? Yeah,
I enjoyed just starting it, because I didn't really know what to expect with doing one, and like we mentioned, the whole awkward stances was a big kind of waking up in the middle of the night going, are we gonna have a guest that doesn't really want to talk or clams up or whatever, and it's just flowed so well. I really enjoyed speaking to Josh, doing on his commercial ones. I think that's our second episode, something like that. We've had a really good one with Aidan as well, which should be out by this one being released.
Yeah, that'll be out.
Yeah, that'll be out. A two-parter, which was really interesting to hear his journey. We've recorded a few that I found the regs one as well with Graham Kenyon, and that just so interesting, and I just couldn't believe that someone could know so much about regulations. But yeah, I can't really pick a favourite because they're so different.
Yeah,
what
that's
about you?
The thing. They are so different, as Michael Peace and Graham Kenyon. And when they were on that little rotation of going around speaking to people, they'd gone to EFIX and the IET at Savoy Palace to speak and try and get the message out there, and the fact that they'd chosen to come and chat with us as well is, that's quite daunting for us. This is a little unit in Driffield, and we've got Graham Kenyon and Michael Peace rocking up to sit down for a couple of hours and chat with us, and then Steve from Napier as well.
Yeah, of course.
It's it's a real privilege, I think, at that level, but also the installers travelling to us, taking their time to come and chat. Josh was obviously all the way in South Wales, so it's a bit of a trek for him, but those sharing those experiences, that's the thing that's really taken me back a little bit, is people are so open and happy to share what they know. I think from doing the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast, they were very much like trying to help people at a technical level. I think there wasn't really any sellout of knowledge that maybe somebody's accrued that could be used commercially, whereas with these, some of the guests may have learnt stuff, including yourself, actually, that
absolutely,
and you maybe don't want to share because someone else might utilise that to compete against you. But there's not really been any of that. There's been an openness and willingness to chat, and I've loved it. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, same here. I think there is that openness, and I think that's the only way that a conversation is successful on a podcast. You know, some of the best podcasts that I listen to are when people aren't selling things. They aren't reading from a script. They are being open about the challenges, the successes, the things that they could have done differently, and yeah, it's just really struck me that people are really willing to talk about that if you give them the place to do it. And I think that's vindicated us actually starting this, because part of me was, when we started this, I was thinking, I wonder if we'll struggle to get people to actually come on, because everyone's busy doing their own work, either on site like ourselves, or in offices, on the regulations, or as a manufacturer trying to deal with all the headaches that I'm sure they have. But people actually want to talk about that, and like with the whole My Energy one, trying to take the heat out of some of the stuff that can just kind of snowball on social media, and actually just sit down and have an hour just to go, right, what's the deal here? And that really struck me. And I think one thing that I do want to push us to do, and I know you are in the same camp as this, but is to now start to vary some of the stuff that we're talking about. We've kind of, it's not a criticism on us, I don't think, but we've kind of gone to our home, haven't we? We've gone to the electrical side, but we know that we can walk in there and chat to people about it, because we're really in that section of industry ourselves. I think the next thing, as well as us improving how we the quality of these going out, I think it's pushing ourselves to then chat to people where we are a little bit in the dark, with heat pumps, with hydrogen, with wind, with just all these kind of mad sectors that make up renewables. The one reason that we wanted it to be the Renewables podcast was because it's so wide ranging, wasn't it? So
yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a bit like pushing a boulder uphill, I think, to start with. But you're not going to struggle to attraction to get some of the heat pump installers and manufacturers to come and chat with us, because we're unknown to that industry, and this is something that's not really, they might not see it as relevant to them.
Yeah.
We've got to have these conversations and build it, and we do need to get some plumbers on for a start, and we do need to get some of the heat pump manufacturers maybe willing to chat with us. And there's Charlotte Lee, actually, from the heat pump, I forget the name of the actual thing, association, who is maybe going to come and have a chat with us too. Damon Blackmore, who I keep mentioning, he is definitely going to come and speak to us. We need to get that sorted out. So we have got those things coming, and I think that's a fair criticism, maybe not a criticism, but we did set out to try and do that, and we haven't done it as yet.
Yeah.
But it is coming. It's just one of those things where you've got to start, and hopefully it naturally leads us to where we want to get to in the end. Yeah,
I've got some really, really interesting people that I've been speaking to on Instagram that want to come on, and they said they don't want to do, they've been asked to do podcasts before, and they haven't wanted to do it because it's had its own agenda. This is on the plumbing side, and that they want to come on this one because it's so open. And I think to keep that rolling, we need to now put our big boy pants on and chat to some plumbers, some architects, some whoever it is that are at the other side of the industry as to what we are personally in our companies, and to chat to those people, and things like heating controls, heat pumps, hydrogen, wind, all these other things that make such a huge part of the renewables industry. And obviously we've had a change of government, and there's a lot of things that they're pushing that the old one maybe wasn't as keen on. So the one thing that's kept me in this industry for so long has been it changing, and so I think we need to address some of that change, and get some of these people on to chat to us.
Yeah, I think that's something that we're definitely going to look towards getting sorted out and getting done, even if that's us going on the road again. I think we're having conversations at the minute with MCS, and we're deciding if we're going to get them to come to us, or as I quite fancy a road trip over to Warrington, but again, it depends on schedules and aligning these things. But they're the kind of conversations we want to have, because obviously MCS is sat across heat pumps, wind and solar. They're not just electricians. Sometimes you lose sight of that when we're going into the solar side of things, but they do envelope all of that stuff. So there's an interesting conversation there, I think, with those guys.
Yeah, I think it's getting the balance as well as to asking the questions that everyone wants to know, and not dancing around, issues that company has had. A bit like we did our best with to do with my energy, and it's a difficult one because no one wants to come on a podcast to just be bombarded with negative comments. So there's a bit of a juggling act there to do with guests that we have on. We have to allow them to speak about what they want to speak about, but also make sure that they're fully aware that we're not going to hide away from questions that everybody else wants to know, because that's the purpose of this. We've set out for this podcast to be about linking everyone up in the industry, and not have these airlocks, as I keep mentioning, of MCS being in their own little airlock where everything's great, and everyone else in their own little airlock where they're annoyed about something, and all this other stuff. It's a case of being fair to the listeners, but also fair to the guests as well. And I think we've struck that fairly well so far. I feel happy with what we've done, but I think it's just keeping that honesty and that openness with everybody that listens, and also that partakes in giving us their time to come on the podcast as well.
Yeah, and people have been receptive to that. I think the level of interrogation, if you like, has stayed on the side of respectfulness and giving an opportunity for people to speak, but also, as you've said, ask those tricky questions. And MCS have got some tricky ones to answer, because there's lots of changes coming around that have now kind of, I think, been delayed into 2025, where they were hoping to have that already done in the way they were going to be assessing people out on site, and some of the requirements around the consumer protection that you may or may not need. So there's questions there that we can ask them, and hopefully they will want to answer them, and that will be helpful to the audience. So they're the kind of things we want to do, but there's definitely a thirst for knowledge from my side, definitely around heat pumps. I'm not so interested in hydrogen, to be honest, but we'll have those conversations if they need to be had. I'm sure there is interesting things I'm totally unaware of with all of that. And if you don't sit down and have a chat with people, you're never going to learn those things. So there's some key goals for us having going forward. And if the audience have any ideas to help us open some of those doors, please do get in touch with us, because these are all new industries to us. If you're listening and you think, actually, I know somebody who installs a load of heat pumps, they're already doing podcasts in our industry or whatever, let us know about it, and we'd love to make those invitations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's even though it's us sitting down doing these conversations, like I've mentioned on this podcast and we did on the first one, this isn't about us as elevating any kind of egos on our side. It is literally to bring people together to have these conversations and hopefully provide value to everyone watching or listening, but also just to open up the conversation so that everyone can learn a little bit and actually de-escalate things if there is a bit of a snowball effect going on social media. So if anyone's got any contacts or even any questions, we try, when we're on the road and we're chatting to people like My Energy or MCS, we're going to be asking everybody on social media to contribute questions. Are there any questions that you want to know? And maybe we could do more, I suppose, because most of that's been on Instagram and LinkedIn a little bit. Maybe we could release some a little YouTube short or something like that, maybe, to ask people to contribute questions, and then bring those questions into the questioning when we get to MCS or whoever it may be. So there's lots of things that we can improve on. We are definitely not the finished article, but hopefully in a year's time we're sat here, Mark, and actually can see that we've kept that honest and upfront theme running through where we are now to where we are in a year's time, which is definitely our goal.
Pair of Lambos outside as well.
Proteus Lambos.
So no, I think that's good. We haven't had a chance actually to catch up about the installer show. I want to ask you about your thoughts on that. Obviously, we've put the podcast out around our visit and such, but I was tied up through a lot of that event on the stand. I did have a whistle to run around, but my assessment of it was that it was just ginormous. So
I
had
totally
nothing like enough time to look at everything.
I didn't. I totally misjudged it. Obviously, I was doing some filming and some audio for that episode, but as soon as I walked in there, it basically punched me in the face that this thing was double what it was last year. And it was such a mix of tools, of plumbing and heating equipment. That's about as specific as I can get with that. Pipes. But it was a mixture of that and then all the electrical side, like the inverters, the panels, and yeah, this thing was huge. I think, is it 3 days it's on for?
Yeah.
You need if you want to go around everything, you need to devote some time to do it, and I don't think it will be in vain. I know for the next one, I'm definitely going to try and get there for 3 days, to a minimum 2. Try and get there for 3 days, because you just need the time to go around it all and to meet the people you want to meet. Because I think that's the good thing about these shows, is they become a meeting point for people that you're speaking to on social media around the country. Everyone congregates to a show like Installer, which is fantastic, because those face-to-face meetings, as we've seen on the podcast, I feel like are just so much more personal.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, who's been on the podcast, he was there, wasn't he? We had a chance to sit down and have a coffee and a chat with him and get his views on the show. And yeah, it was a nice vibe, I think, around the whole thing. Fair play to Installer, they did lay that on really nicely. And I've just remembered, actually, there was a company called Road there who want to come on and speak with us.
Okay.
They're a bit like Monta.
Oh, yeah.
Payment app for EV charging and such. So they were keen to come and have a chat with us. Maybe that's something we could explore, a way for electricians. I forgot exactly what he said, but there's a way for us to monetize EV charge points after they've been installed as like ongoing revenue. So he wanted to come and have a chat about that, obviously to market what they're doing, but more widely about the growth in electric vehicle charge points and stuff. So there's things like that I need to start writing down. We've got quite a list, haven't we, in our
I don't think we
group chat.
expected it, did we?
No.
I think we expected to be really scratching for people. Might be a bit harsh, that, but we were a bit worried that we would struggle to get people to come on, and then literally within the first episode or two, it was actually more that we couldn't keep up with, trying to arrange it all around obviously running our own businesses. I know I'm definitely guilty of that. You kind of get an email and you think, right, I'm going to deal with that tonight, and then something happens at work and you think, oh, you wake up the next day and think, I've still not replied to that. And yeah, I definitely need to get better at that. But it's been really encouraging that people want to talk about this stuff, and they aren't shying away from putting the word out there and from chatting. And I think, like you mentioned with Road, there was a company there called Passive that do heat pump controls. They were keen to come on as well. But I think the balance that we need to hold ourselves accountable to is that it's not just a sales thing for them, because we owe it to everybody listening and watching for the value coming out of that. So they obviously are coming on to push what they want to push, but there has to be an angle for us to provide value to everybody watching, and that is a theme that's running throughout what we do. Because we don't want to be told that we're selling out to these sort of companies.
Yeah. I mean, the guests aren't paying to be here, unfortunately, are they? We should
No,
maybe start charging Mike and Dan and Aidan and everyone else who's coming in to have a chat with us. But yeah, I totally agree. We want to obviously give people an opportunity to speak to electricians and plumbers and such with the products and stuff they've got, but also for the technical, I guess, knowledge that comes around all of that. I think it's important we try and extract that through the podcast that we're doing. And, we've got TIS and Give Energy who want to come and speak to us again. That's in our sector of things. So
have to mix them in.
It's trying to blend all of that together. But again, it's not just a sales pitch from those kind of things. I know the guys at TIS, they want to come and talk about testing solar panels and systems, more to get our knowledge on that for them, to have those conversations with us. So there's a buy in both sides to all of those chats. And we can talk about the products and explain what they can do. And people may go off and buy some of that stuff, who knows. But for me, the real important side of those conversations is what you take away in technical knowledge. And I think we've done that, both in running a business, getting into the solar industry as an older person, such as Mike. That podcast might not be out as yet, and his journey with that, and then some of the people who've been in this game for a long time, like Dan and yourself, who've got going with this. I know Stuart Cater wanted to come and chat with us, but he's basically in France, so we have to get him up here for a conversation. So it's really exciting. I've absolutely loved taking part in these, and I think where we can go next is even more exciting still, and hopefully you guys and girls listening and watching are keen to keep bearing with us. We may try and introduce new ways of bringing the show in for a start. Who knows, we might get a theme tune. One of the things we have tried to avoid is going heavy with influencers, if you like, on what that's conscious speaking personally. There's obviously people in industry who are pretty well known on Instagram and YouTube who I'm friends with, sort of.
Same.
Outside, and I could have made those requests to come and help us really push this out there, but I've been careful not to do that. I want it to stand on its own 2 feet.
Yeah, exactly the same. I think those people that are on social media that are influencers, they probably cringe at the fact that we're calling them that, but that's what they are obviously influencers because they provide value to their audience. That's how they get to that stage. And what we've spoken about is that we don't want to be seen to be using that to elevate this podcast. We want to chat to those people because they have a really cool insight into the renewables world. But I feel like if we'd have done that really early on, it would have felt like we were doing that to just elevate the podcast. Obviously, we haven't got thousands and thousands of subscribers and all of this at this point, but we want it to keep its honesty and its value in the conversations rather than just the headline clickbait kind of guests that we've got on. We want those people to come on because of what they're going to speak about. If a byproduct of that is their standing in the industry and their social media presence brings more traffic to the Renewables podcast, then fantastic. That is ultimately a win-win, but the conversation has to be of value, and we have to have a topic that we're going to talk about. Could be quite a wide-ranging topic, but we want to get that value from that guest, not just please tell us about how amazing social media is, or how do you get 1 million followers, or it's not about that. It's about the value that they're going to talk about within the scope of renewables.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple that I think you've worked with in Jordan and Corey, so Artisan and OY Electrical, and I know I speak with those guys both privately and on social media, and they're in our industry. I'd love to chat
absolutely.
with them, and they want to come and talk with us actually, so they have said they're more than happy to do that. And I think there's interesting conversations there. Speaking for Corey, he's just going through his MCS and getting all sorted out with those kind of things, and I think there's an interesting chat around that. And then obviously with Jordan and his business growing in the way it has, and some of the challenges he's faced alongside that, I think there's bits we can take from him, and maybe some knowledge he can gain from us in return.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with Jordan, I know we helped him on their first kind of help teach them about solar and renewables. So we've got that experience with Jordan at Artisan, but there's obviously those guys have got a really huge following, but there's other ones as well that are maybe not quite at that level of following, but the value that they have and the knowledge that they have is unbelievable. You mentioned Stuart Cato, that he's got so much knowledge within the industry, and he's been in it for donkey's years. Sorry, Stuart, if that's calling you old.
I think he's older than me, actually. Maybe not quite. Getting close.
We'll ask him if we get him on. But there's so many people of value in this industry that have so much to share, and that hopefully we can be that mouthpiece to get their message out.
Yeah, I mean, Stuart's a powerhouse. We wouldn't be in renewables without him. I've said that on all of our content for a good while. Matty and Nathan think the world of him. He's the one who taught him how to work on a roof first. And that's something he wants to do. He wants to try and help people level up. Yeah. Certainly the younger people, because he is an OG of solar. And I think getting him on for a chat would be a really good conversation. And there's Ben Curry as well, actually. He wants to come on and have a chat. He's actually a podcasting guru outside of our industry. He keeps it on the lowdown, so I'm not going to reveal what it is he talks about, because he may not want electricians to know. But yeah, he's big on podcasts, so we'll try and get Ben down for a bit of a chat too. And yeah, it's exciting, mate. I think it started well. We've got big plans, and hopefully we can see it through. Is there anything else you want to add while we're having a chat?
No, I just think, just to reiterate the fact that we want feedback from everybody watching and listening. What do you want to improve? What guests do you want to see? Are there any topics that you want us to cover? We obviously can do a bit of research and things if it's slightly outside of our wheelhouse as to what we're doing day to day. We're going to push things forward with different areas of the renewables industry to help make it even more interesting and hopefully provide even more value. But just a massive thank you to everybody that has already watched, listened, shared, reached out to us personally, just to express criticism, but also to express the fact that they're liking listening to it or watching it, and just a massive thank you to everybody that has helped support us so far, and of course a massive thank you to Proteus, who have decided to help us level things up as well. So yeah, massive thanks to those guys and to everybody watching.
Yeah, and again, there'll be a link over to the Proteus website in the description of this video if you want to go off and check any of the data sheets out around those products. It's among the best websites out there in terms of manufacturers of switchgear. It's all on there to do with the bi-directional products, what is and what isn't. And yeah, I just want to say again, massive thanks to all the audience who have watched. We're kind of around a couple of thousand downloads and views a week now, which I think is just bonkers for a relatively new startup in this. I know from doing the Apprentice one-to-one side of things, those numbers are comparable, and that's been going now for 4 or 5 years with a much bigger following on YouTube and on the audio platform. So we're doing really well. It's encouraging. And yeah, just a massive thank you to the audience. If you have got any questions in and around this particular episode, please do drop them in below. As Sam said, we want that feedback. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.